Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. If you've ever dreamed of getting back at a company that owed you money, this one's going to hit the spot. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with a turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. The day my boss turned into his own collections agency. The company I work for is technically a family business, but it's grown enough over the years that we now have branches in several countries. With that kind of spread, you end up running into a lot of different business cultures and legal systems. Some countries have strict regulations and strong contract enforcement, while others are, let's just say, a little more relaxed when it comes to things like accountability and payment disputes. This story takes place in one of our Eastern country divisions where laws exist, but the enforcement can be hit or miss, and where sometimes if you want to get paid, you have to get creative. The division leader there, let's call him Bob, is the youngest brother of my boss. Bob's a character. He's sharp, no nonsense, and has that mix of business savvy and stubbornness that makes him perfect for dealing with tough clients. A few years back, Bob landed a set of contracts to transport goods for a big client. Pretty standard stuff. Load the goods, deliver them to the customer, submit the paperwork, wait for payment. Okay, this time the payment never came. A month passed, then 2. The company on the other end swore up and down that they'd sent the money, that there must be some kind of bank error, but after double checking and triple checking, it was clear. Our Eastern Division's account had never received a cent. This is where I came in, hearing about the whole debacle secondhand. Apparently, things had gotten pretty heated over email, insults, accusations, plenty of corporate posturing, but no progress. Now, anyone who's worked in cargo knows this. The goods you're hauling are usually worth at least 20 times what you're getting paid to transport them. This little fact is what gave Bob his idea. One day, Bob accepted another order from the same company. Yes, the very same one that had stiffed him on payment, but this time he accepted under slightly different details, enough to make sure they wouldn't immediately realize who they were dealing with. Then he personally got behind the wheel. Bob drove the truck himself to the customer, loaded the goods as instructed, and then disappeared. He parked the truck in a secure, undisclosed location, pulled the plug on every GPS device in the vehicle, and even disconnected the batteries just to be sure no one could track it. What followed was absolute chaos. The client fired off furious emails demanding to know where their shipment was, threatening legal action, blacklisting everything under the sun. Bob didn't flinch. He simply replied, "Pay my money and I'll personally see to it that your goods are delivered safe and sound." And just like that, the tables had turned. Within a very short time, faster than any of the previous "we already sent the payment" nonsense, the money hit the division's bank account. Not just the original amount they were owed either. Word around the company is that Bob even managed to get them to cough up a little extra as a bonus for the trouble they'd caused him. Once the payment cleared, Bob reconnected everything, drove the truck to its proper destination, and delivered the goods in perfect condition. No police got involved, no lawsuits were filed, just one very unhappy company that learned a very expensive lesson about trying to stiff the wrong guy. And to this day, every time the story comes up around the office, someone always laughs and says, "Bob's the kind of guy who doesn't need a collections agency. He is the collections agency." I love that he went full vigilante logistics manager on him, personally drove the truck, yanked the GPS, hid the whole load, and just waited for the panic to set in. That must have been the most satisfying email he's ever sent in his life. Pay me and your stuff gets delivered. Cold, calm, and impossible to argue with. And our second story. My disabled wife versus the sister who thought she could cross us. Living with my sister was supposed to be temporary, 6 months tops while she figured her life out. She'd lost her job right before quarantine and claimed she just needed a place to stay while she got back on her feet. 6 months later, she hadn't applied to a single job, spent her days glued to TikTok, and contributed absolutely nothing to the household, unless you count stirring up drama as a contribution. For context, my wife uses a wheelchair. She can walk a few steps if absolutely necessary, but standing for more than a couple of minutes puts her in unbearable pain. She's private about it and never complains. She hates asking for help, even from me. But sometimes she just has to. The problem? my sister has made it very clear she doesn't like my wife. I've overheard her on the phone using racial slurs to describe her, mocking her disability and calling her a burden. I should have kicked her out the first time I heard it, but I kept telling myself she'd grow up. Then came the bathroom incident. I was outside doing yard work when my wife asked my sister if she could help clean the bathroom. Totally reasonable. She'd been living here rent-free for months, and my wife literally couldn't scrub the tub if she wanted to. Instead of being a decent human being, my sister snapped. I'm not doing anything here, and definitely not cleaning an effing bathroom. They argued, and I heard my wife raise her voice, which she almost never does, so I came inside. My sister immediately tried to spin some sob story about how my wife was threatening her. I turned to my wife and asked what happened. She explained everything calmly, without yelling or name-calling, and I just turned and glared at my sister. You've been living here rent-free for 6 months, I said. You can clean the damn bathroom. Her response? To cross her arms and shriek that she wasn't anyone's maid. She started throwing excuses like, I didn't make the mess, and I don't even use that bathroom, which was a lie. She used that bathroom exclusively. My wife, who used to be a teacher and doesn't put up with nonsense, told her plainly, either pitch in or find somewhere else to stay. That's when my sister lost it completely. Whatever, she screamed. If that crippled woman can't do it, then I won't either. I saw red. I'm usually a chill guy, but insult my wife, the person who's already fought through hell just to keep her independence, and that switch flips fast. Get out, I said, my voice low. She blinked. What? Get out of my house before I call the police, I repeated. She rolled her eyes and scoffed. Fine, I'll call an Uber and go to my boyfriend's house. With what money, I asked. That's when she pulled out a wallet, my daughter's wallet, my 12-year-old daughter who has autism and had been carefully saving allowance money for months to buy a game for her DS. I must have blacked out from rage because the next thing I remember is my wife pushing me toward our room, telling me to take a breather. She had this mischievous little smile on her face that told me something had just gone down. What happened, I asked. She's gone, my wife said, still grinning, and so is the money she tried to steal. Apparently, while I was in the other room cooling off, my wife calmly took the wallet back, locked the front door behind my sister, and told her she could wait for her Uber on the curb. My sister screamed some choice words at the door, but by then I didn't care. She's now staying with my parents, who promptly called me to scream at me for abandoning my sister. They actually had the gall to say, we'll turn the entire family against you if you don't let her back. And just to twist the knife, my mom said we should have never let you marry that disabled wench. I just laughed and said, funny, you weren't invited to the wedding, remember? Because you tried to give my sister the venue we'd already booked? Stay mad. Then I hung up. Since then, we've changed the locks, blocked my sister on everything, and put cameras on the property. My daughter got her money back, and I even took her out to buy the game she'd been saving for, just to celebrate. And my sister, word has gotten around the family about what she called my wife and that she stole from her own niece. Now half the relatives won't let her stay with them. Her boyfriend dumped her after finding out what happened, and she's back living with my parents, who are suddenly discovering that maybe having their spoiled adult daughter under their roof isn't so fun after all. For once, the house is quiet, my wife is smiling again, and I can finally breathe. I think you handled this in the healthiest way possible. You didn't just kick her out, you drew a line in the sand. You changed the locks, got cameras, and protected your household's peace. That sends a very clear message. Your wife and daughter's safety and dignity come first. Period. And our last story. HOA queen threatened my wife. She didn't know who my husband was. You know that kind of woman who marries an old millionaire, buys designer yoga pants, and suddenly thinks she's running the entire neighborhood like it's Beverly Hills? Yeah, that's Amelia. My husband Jack and I had just moved into our new home, a quiet suburban neighborhood with its own HOA. Because of course it did. Jack was 56, silver hair, broad shoulders, the kind of man who still carried that quiet authority even when he was off duty. He'd served over 30 years in law enforcement, took 2 bullets in the line of duty, and was only months away from retiring as chief of police in the neighboring city. We'd lived in city apartments our whole lives and finally decided to trade sirens for birdsong. We just wanted peace. But peace apparently wasn't on Amelia's HOA-approved list. Amelia was the self-proclaimed queen of the subdivision. Her husband, some 70-year-old real estate mogul who looked like he was built entirely out of money and regret, had bought her the position of HOA president, or so the neighbors joked. She ran the place with an iron fist and a fake smile. And, of course, the HOA had its own security department. Imagine 3 guys with golf carts, tactical vests, and enough ego to invade a small country. Their chief, a man named Arthur, strutted around like a mall cop who'd just watched Die Hard too many times. One sunny afternoon, while Jack was out of town at a police conference, I decided to plant some flowers by the mailbox. Arthur drove up in his HOA golf cart, yelling something about violating planting regulations. I told him, as politely as possible, to go mind his own damn begonias. Apparently that was too much. He got out of the cart, got in my face, and when I tried to walk away, he shoved me hard. I fell onto the concrete edge of the sidewalk, and my ribs snapped like twigs. The pain was unreal. A neighbor saw it happen and ran over, but Arthur just muttered something about resisting instructions and drove off like the coward he was. I spent the night in the ER with bruised ribs and a bruised ego. I wanted to call Jack, but he was 3 hours away in D.C. and in meetings. I didn't want him to worry, or worse, come home and make the evening news. The next day, Amelia herself showed up at my door, hair perfectly curled, fake tan glowing, pearls on her neck like she'd just stepped out of a country club. She smiled, the kind of smile that's all gums and venom. You know, she said, it'd be very unfortunate if you filed a police report. Accidents happen, and we wouldn't want this neighborhood to turn unpleasant for you. I just stared at her. She thought I was some meek housewife. She had no idea who my husband was. When Jack came back 4 days later, I tried to downplay it. Big mistake. The moment he saw the bruises, his face went blank. That same cold, professional stillness I'd seen a few times before when he was really angry. He asked one question: who touched you? When I told him, he went so quiet it scared me. For a man who'd spent decades breaking up gang fights, even he looked ready to commit a small war crime. But I begged him not to do anything rash. I didn't want lawsuits, scandals, or his pension at risk. He nodded slowly, kissed my forehead, and said, "All right, no rash moves. I'll handle it." And oh boy, did he handle it. First, he made a single phone call to his brother Mike. Mike worked for the state's Department of Public Safety Licensing Division. Jack didn't even mention Amelia or Arthur by name, just asked him to look into a neighborhood security company operating under HOA authority. 2 days later, Mike called back, laughing so hard he could barely breathe. "Jack, you're going to love this. Their chief, that Arthur guy, his security certification expired 6 years ago. His new one's a fake, and the whole outfit's unlicensed." Within a week, state inspectors rolled into the HOA office. Amelia's little security army was shut down on the spot, their badges confiscated, their trucks impounded. Arthur got personally escorted off the premises by real cops, the same ones who used to salute Jack. Neighbors came out to watch like it was the Super Bowl. I stood on our porch, ribs still aching, holding a cup of tea and trying not to grin too hard. But Jack wasn't done, oh no. While going through the inspection paperwork, Mike noticed something odd, a set of HOA financial records that didn't match state filings. Out of curiosity and maybe a bit of brotherly mischief, he dug deeper. Turns out Amelia had been skimming money from the HOA budget. Inflated invoices for landscaping, fake maintenance contracts, even payments to non-existent companies, all conveniently routed through her consulting firm. Mike sent an anonymous packet straight to the IRS. 3 weeks later, a shiny black SUV pulled up in front of Amelia's mansion. Out stepped 3 men in suits with clipboards, federal auditors. Let's just say the next HOA meeting was canceled until further notice. Rumor has it her husband nearly had a stroke when he found out. The IRS froze their accounts pending investigation. Half the neighborhood whispered about fraudulent activity, and the other half just enjoyed the quiet. By the end of the month, Amelia had stepped down as HOA president and disappeared to visit family out of state. Arthur? He's facing charges for assault and unlicensed security work. And us? Jack finally got his peace and quiet. Every morning he sits on the porch with his coffee, smiles at the empty security booth and the gate, and says, "Funny thing about justice, it always shows up. Sometimes it just needs an invitation." The moral's simple. If you want to play with the law, make sure you don't live next to the man who enforces it. HOA Queen, "I'll make your life a living hell." Jack, retired police chief, writes down her address in his notebook All right then. See you in court, darling. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.